Good morning to all of you. We are today going to discuss about the details of 43BH, which is the current topic for the tax audit season. But in order to do that, we have to first understand the MSMEs, and the MSME Act. This is also very important. So let's start first now to understand what is an MSME, why there is an importance of MSME so much being given by the government. So if you look at it, the micro, medium, small and medium enterprises, that's what is MSME sector, is a major contributor to the social development of the country. If you look at it, social development of the country. On top of that, the sector has also gained importance because it contributes hugely to the country's GDP. So if you look at it, it contributes almost 30% of India's GDP. On top of that, you have also that the MSMEs employ almost 110 million people, and it is the second largest employer after agriculture. And it also contributes to 48% of India's exports. So all these reasons are why the government has realized that this is a very important area which needs support, and in some form or the other, they have been doing it. The problem with the MSME today is that the main problem that they have been saying that money flow. When they sell something, they don't get the money. There is a working capital problem for them. So that is one area that the government has been trying to address with various things. Let us move forward now to understand something more about the MSMEs. Now, this is the data as per MSME Ministry of Micro and Small Medium Enterprise. If you realize it, the government has created a ministry only for MSMEs. And as per that, the ministry, as on March 2024, the structure of micro, small, medium, these are the three structures in which it is given. These are the number of units, and this is a percentage that is part of the total MSME. Then comes small and then medium. So if you look at it, the major number of units is in the micro sector. And we are also part of it. It's not that we are out of it. We are also part of this micro only. And most of the audit firms will be falling under that. Now the division between micro, small, medium, we will come to that. But what you need to understand is we are micro as well as we are also serving the micro enterprises only. Majorly, we are serving them only. Now let's move forward. Now, if you look at the tax audit report, already, if you look at it, tax audit requires us to disclose regarding the interest disallowance under Section 23 of the MSME Act. MSME Act requires that interest is paid under this interest to be paid on delayed payments, and if the interest is paid for delayed payment, that interest expenditure is also delayed. This is there from a long time. Interest and the disallowance was introduced some years back. And we have been looking at it, but we have been ignoring this reporting totally because we're not bothered to understand it. Similarly, if you look at it under Schedule 3, recently, about last year or something, they have changed the reporting requirements relating to trade payables, wherein the aging should be MSME others, disputed others. So here also they want a segregation of the MSME separately to understand how much is the impact on the MSME and how much for others. Here also we have not been very lenient in reporting because basically the reason is because the data is not properly organized as far as the industry is concerned. So let us move on. Now, what has happened is earlier there was a definition of MSME which was a little difficult to achieve. So at some point of time in 2020, the definition of micro, small and medium enterprises, there was a revision. Under the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan scheme, they had revised it and they had announced it on May 13th. Subsequently, as a follow-up, the ministry issued notification on June 1st, 2020, and finally it was came into effect from July 1st, 2020. This new classification became applicable. So this is the hierarchy in which it happened. Therefore, the new classification of micro medium enterprises under the scheme is on the basis of investment criteria in plant and turnover. So what is that we will try to look at soon. Now this is the classification of MSMEs between the three. So it is turnover based as well as investment based. So micro means anything that does not exceed 5 crore of turnover and 1 crore investment of investments on plant and machinery. Small is 50 and 10, and medium is 250 and 50. This is the category in which they have divided. It should not exceed. And in order to be in micro, both the conditions have to be satisfied, both 5 crore as well as 1 crore. It should be below, then it will be termed as micro. If it is 5 crore, here it is 1.5 crores, then gone. It will come under small, and similarly medium. Now this breakup is very much required because of the fact that there is a need for us to understand the categorization first. Then only we can move into the next. Now, in order to understand the entire gamut of things, we need to first know some things under the MSME Act. The MSME Act was passed in 2006, way back in a long time back. It was published in 1st May and notified on 30th September 2006. There are 32 sections and 16 definitions under section 2. And we are going to look at some of these definitions and some of these sections, because without understanding it, we will not be able to do the compliance under 43B, because we need to understand these uh, particular definitions as well as some of the sections. Then only we can get a clarity of the 43B section, 43B disclosure. Now, these are some sections that we are going to look at: section 2, section 7, 8, 15, 16, etc., which is coming under the MSME Act. Now, before that, let us understand the preamble. What is the basis on which the MSME Act was passed? It is an act to provide for facilitating the promotion and development and enhancing the competitiveness of micro, small, and medium enterprises for matters connected therewith or incident with. That's the basic premise under which this was formed. Now, one by one, we look at a definition. What is this? This is appointed date. What does it mean? It means that the day following after the expiry of 15 days. Appoint date. Please remember, appoint date 15 days from the expiry of the day of acceptance or the day of deemed acceptance of what? Of goods or any service by a buyer from a supplier. So number one, this. Number two, three. These things you have to know. Now, what is goods and service also, we'll come to that. So, in order to understand this, let us move forward. Day of acceptance. What is it saying? So, that is section itself. Day of acceptance means the actual delivery of goods or service or rental of service, or when there is an objection is made in writing by the buyer regarding the acceptance of goods or service within 15 days from the date. So try to understand. Here there is a 15 day, this 15 days different. This 15 days for objection to be given for any goods that has not come up to the particular quality. That is the meaning of this 15 days. From the date of delivery of goods, you have to complain. Then the day on which the objection is removed. So, for example, there was a problem in a material. It was pointed out by the receiver of goods within 15 days. So, he raised an objection, and obviously it should be written. So, it's saying it is written here, it's in writing. And the day on which the supplier has again replaced the goods or corrected the anomaly, that will be the day of acceptance here. So normally it is actually delivery of goods or service, but in case of any objection, it will move to the date the objection was removed. That is how you have. And what is the time limit for giving the objection 15 days. Similarly, if there is no objection, then the deemed date of acceptance where no objection is made within 15 days, then the day on which such objection is removed by the supplier. No, this is not correct. The day on which the delivery of goods has happened, that is a thing. This, I think there is an error in which it has been done. So this is, ignore it. It will be the day on which the delivery of goods has taken place. Now let us understand this appointed date and date of acceptance. Date of actual delivery, let us take it as an example, 15th April. How many days he has got time for raising the receiver of goods? He has got time for objection, 15 days. So 15 days time is there. Therefore, 30th April is the last date for raising the objection. Now let us look at four situations. What are the four situations? Situation one, no, for all of these, we are going to look at example. No written objection, no agreement. Nothing is there. Second situation, no written objection, but agreement is there. Agreement for what? Agreement for the terms of credit. Next is there is no written, there is written objection, but no agreement is available for terms of credit. And last one is both are available in that case. How do we go? So for each one, we will look at an example. So it will be clear. So example first one is no written objection, no agreement regarding credit period. This is the first one. No objection and no agreement. Now in that case, day of acceptance is the date of delivery. That is 15th of April. Now, mind you, because there is no objection and there is no agreement, the date of delivery will become the appointed date. The due date for payment is, sorry, this will become the date of acceptance, and the due date of payment, which is appointed date is 30th April. So from here to here, it is 15 days. This is what is saying. Appointed days is 15 days from the date of acceptance. And when does if suppose it is not paid within this due date, the interest liability will start from 1st May. That is next day after this. So again, I'm repeating, when no objection is there, no agreement, the date of acceptance will be date of delivery because there is no agreement and of any a credit period. So it will be that day of delivery will be date of acceptance. What is the appointed date? Appointed date will be 30 days. How 30 days? 30th April. How is the date? 15th April plus 15 days. So that is how 30th April is coming. Interest liability will start from 1st May. Now let us look at the next situation. No objection, but there is an agreement for credit. There is an agreement for credit. So date of acceptance will be no objection. Therefore, date of agreement will be 15th April. But because there is an agreement, the maximum credit period that can be granted will be how much? 45 days. Because there is an agreement, even though the agreement can have 60 days, but maximum as per this can be granted is 15 days. Therefore, from 15th of April to 30th of May is 45 days. Therefore, due date as per MSME Act is 30th May. And interest liability, suppose it is not paid within this period, the interest liability will start from 31st May. Because I've taken approximately 45 days. There 1 or 2 days here and there, calculation may be there, but we'll have to calculate it properly. The interest liability will start if it is not paid before 30th. This will be 30th May. It will start. Again, let's move forward. When objection is there made in writing, but there is no agreement. So let us look at date of acceptance will be date of resolution. And when was it resolved? 20th April. So supply has happened on 15th. Supply has happened on 15th, but it was resolved on 20th of April. Therefore, date on which it was resolved will be the date of acceptance, which is 20th of April. Is it clear? Now, from that date, how many days? There is no objection. Therefore, it is allowed as 15 days only is available. 15 days is only available to this. But from 20th April to 5th May, you got 15 days. 15 days time is only there because there's no objection. 5th May will be your appointed date. Then if they have to be paid before this time, and if it is not paid, from 6th interest liability will start. This is the basic premise of this whole thing. Now, one more, when what happens situation, as you saw, objection is also there, agreement also exists, and the objection has been resolved on 20th of April. The date of resolution will be the date of acceptance, that is 20th of April. And from there, how many days? Because objection is there, right? 20th April. And because agreement is there, maximum he can get 45 days. So from 20th of April to 4th June, approximately 45 days coming to 4th June. So the due date of payment will be 4th June 2024. And if it is not paid before that, so this will be the appointed date. And the last day interest liability will start from 5th June. So that will give you a perspective of what are the things we would be clearly able to understand what is the date of acceptance, what is the date, appointed date, and interest liability when it starts in these 4 examples. Now, some more definitions we need to do. What is an enterprise? It means industrial undertaking or a business concern or any other establishment, whatever name called, engaged in manufacture, very careful, manufacture or production of goods in any manner. Very important to understand this definition because we'll see something more. In any manner pertaining to any industry, the first schedule of Industries Development Act, etc. Also, or engage in providing or rendering any service or services. So manufacturing and production and providing medicines only becomes an enterprise under the MSME Act. That is only qualifying as a enterprise under the MSME Act. So what is the implication? This is the implication. Traders and works contractors are not covered under this definition of the provisions for MSME Act, do not apply to such traders and work contractors. As per FAQ of 2016-2410, Ministry has clarified that the policy is meant for procurement of goods and services or services rendered by MSME and traders are excluded from the policy. Very important. Various court rulings have held that works contracts are also not covered under the MSME. Some of the case laws are quoted here. Similarly, as per office memorandum, this office memorandum of the central government has again clarified that retail and wholesale traders as MSME it is decided to include under UTM registration, but for what? But not for the purpose of the benefits of MSME. It is only for the purpose of priority sector lending. That is the only reason why it is being included here. So it is for the purpose of giving priority sector lending. If they are under Udyam registration, then they get the benefit of priority sector lending. But it is not for the benefit of MSME. So the benefit of MSME, retail, wholesale, MSME are restricted up to priority sector lending only, and other benefits, including provisions for delayed payment of MSME, are excluded. In view of the office memorandum, a supplier who is a micro or small enterprise cannot be treated as supplier under section 15 and 43 bets and 43H purposes if his Udyam registration is shown as an activity as a trader. So this is a big relief for our compliance, but the problem is we have to identify this. So let us move on. What are the checkpoints? How to check under 420? First, we have to check whether it is a supply of goods or service or works contract. If it is a works contract, MSME compliance is not required for this contract. So therefore, this is gone. Therefore, you got supply of goods, supply of service. Now let us supply of goods. If it is a supply of goods, check whether goods are supplied, goods supplied or manufactured by the vendor. If not, again, he is only a trader and MSME compliance will not be required. Will not be required. That's why trader of hardware items is not eligible for the benefit of MSME. So therefore, then comes supply of services. Further check whether services are supplied by the vendor himself or by some other person. If it is by some other person, vendor is merely an intermediary and is not an eligible for benefit. So these are all things we need to check to ensure that the benefit of MSME is given only to the persons who is deserving under the MSME Act. This is what we need to be very careful about. Now, there has been a lot of misuses. That is why through MSME benefits are eligible to various enterprises, and they may have registered under the Udyam registration by furnishing false information. In order to ensure that suppliers are eligible to be registered under the MSME Act, what we can do is we can insist on getting a CA certificate from the supplier of our client before taking compliance obligation in relation to MSMEs. This is an alternate way of doing it. That why? Because large companies have already started asking CA certificates from our clients, and we have to be careful when we give the certificate. We cannot just take the Udyam registration and give a certificate, because our client may be only a trader, and he is not eligible to get the benefit of MSME Act as far as the benefits are concerned. Udyam registration does not entitle all all the benefits of MSME. That's very clear. So when you suppose there is a requirement for you to give a certificate to to your client is coming and asking you that please give me a certificate. Please be careful while giving the certificate. Otherwise, you will be held responsible for giving a wrong certificate. Now, who is a supplier under this act? Supplier is a micro and small enterprise only. Again, we have to take care. The definition under the MSME Act for a supplier only states micro and small. Therefore, the requirement of compliance to a medium enterprise is not there. The benefits are not available to medium enterprises. So therefore, any company, cooperative trust, by whatever name called, registered or constituted under the law for the time being, engaged with selling goods produced by micro and small enterprise and rendering service, which are provided by such enterprise. Only then it will come, which means medium enterprises are out of the scope of benefits of MSME. Now, how do you register with them? This is a Udyam registration basically. File a memorandum of micro and small, as the case may be, medium, with the such authority as may be specified. Basically, the Udyam registration is what's needed. The liability to make payment, where any supplier supplies any goods or service or renders a service to any buyer, the buyer shall make payment thereof on or before the date agreed upon between them, the supplier in writing, or where there is no agreement on this draft before the appointment date. That's why this knowing the appointment date, what is appointment date, is very important. Now here, very importantly, they have given a restriction, they proviso to it, provided that in no case the period agreed between the supplier and the buyer in writing shall not exceed 45 days, which means if there is an agreement between the supplier and the buyer for 60 days credit, it is not available under the MSME Act. He has to pay within 45 days. It cannot exceed 45 days from the date of acceptance of deemed acceptance. Why? Because it restricts it. You cannot, between the supplier and the what's it called, buyer, they cannot agree on any terms of credit. Maximum available is 45 days. In order to avail the maximum time limit of 45 days, it is important that the entity enters into a written agreement with the vendor showing credit period. So for the purpose of the agreement, we have to ensure that there is a written agreement. Because right at the beginning, we saw that there should be a written agreement between them. If no written agreement is there, whether purchase order that is issued, is that enough for credit period? Yes, that is enough. It should be enough. That is also taken as a written agreement. Now what happens? Date from which and the rate on which it is applied. From date when what date it will apply. The buyer fails to make the payment of the amount to the supplier under section 15. The buyer shall, notwithstanding anything contained in the agreement between the buyer and the supplier in any law for the time being, be liable to the buyer to pay compound interest rates with monthly rest. Please understand these things. Compound interest relates to the supplier on the amount from the appointed date, or as the case may be, from the date immediately following the date agreed upon. at 3 times the rate, which means if bank rate is 4%, the applicable rate will be 12.12%, 3 times. So, in simple words, interest will be applicable from the day the delay starts from the appointed day. After that, if it's not paid, the interest rate will be paid at 3 times the notified rate, which is the bank rate. Suppose the bank rate is 4%, the applicable rate will be 12% interest has to be paid. This interest, if the buyer pays, which we saw, PCD says this will not be allowed as expenditure, it will be disallowed to the buyer. The bank rate is subject to revision in case the rate, in that case, rate at the end of each month to be considered and calculated for compounding purpose. What are the other things? Suppose there is a multiple supplies on on account payments. Issues can come. Common issues which may include situation in which supplier has done multiple supplies and payments are also on account. We usually have a lot of cases where it is round payments are made. If payment is identified to a particular debt or bill, it should be appropriated accordingly. If not, it should be discharged in order of time. Basically, I would say FIFO basis. That's how you can follow. The payment should be appropriate to the earliest date, and whatever is remaining, you have to see to make a check whether there is a problem or not. Recovery for goods supplied or services rendered by the supplier, the buyer shall be liable to pay the amount of interest thereon as per section. Now, if there is any dispute of that, it has to be referred to the Facilitation Council, Micro and Small Enterprise Facilitation Council. Now we really come into the Act part of it relating to the income taxes. We have more or less finished the things relating to MSME Act. Now we are looking at the 43B. So in order to do that, let us look at the new section 43BH. What does it say? Certain deductions is the normal on actual payment, notwithstanding anything contained in any other provision. Deduction otherwise allowed under this act will be as follows. So 40 action we have quoted here. Any sum payable by the assessee to a micro or small enterprise beyond the time limit specified in section 15. So that's why we studied all that. The micro section 15 of MSME Act, we read that. Shall be allowed in irrespective of the previous year in which the liability to pay such sum was incurred by the SC according to the method of accounting regularly employed by him, only in computing the income referred to in section 28 of the previous year in which the sum is actually paid. So this is very important. We need to understand that you have to follow and understand MSME Act, otherwise you cannot do it. So let us move forward to understand this better. Little more, we will see some more issues are there relating to this, which some of them we can answer. These are some debatable issues. We'll come to that. And then finally, still more details, we'll understand the applicability of 43BH. Now, we have already discussed this, which means, is it applicable for traders, the definition of enterprise? No, it is not applicable. That is why traders are not included in the under the enterprise under MSME Act, they're not covered in the 43B. Now, suppose opening balances are same thing is continuing now as closing balance. The opening balance is continuing. For them, is the 43BH applicable? No. That means if you look at it, I'll give you an example. Suppose this is the creditor's ledger. Buy balance 60,000. Say no transaction is there and 60,000 still is there. So whether we have to look for the 60,000 again 43BH because it's outstanding, not required. Or if the balance is continuing, some more bills have come, some payments, still there is an opening balance continuing. Is 43B applicable for this? No, because there is no expenditure related to this. That expenditure happened in the earlier year. So not applicable as 43B applies only to expenses of the relevant previous year. Now, amount outstanding at the year end. Is the amount outstanding at the year end in MSME books disallowed under 43B? Yes, if an amount is payable to MSME remains unpaid beyond the stipulated period. Just because it's outstanding, you cannot say. You have to look at MSME Act, that 15 days, 45 days, all that you have to judge, and then only decide whether it will be disallowed or not. Blanket thing you cannot do that. You know, it is remaining outstanding, therefore it will be disallowed. then it will be allowed in the year of actual payment. So be careful that on March 31st, something is outstanding and they are MSME, still it will not be disallowed. You have to check the 15 days, 45 days rule and then only take a decision. This is another question which we need to understand, that which comes in, that if suppose that you are purchasing a goods or any item which includes GST also, therefore the purchase or expense is there, should the GST be included for disallowance purpose under 43B? The inclusion of GST depends on whether the taxpayer claims input tax credit or not, which means that if you are showing how you are showing the input tax credit. So if suppose there is an expenditure for audit fees, say, so you have debited say 20,000 and input tax is 20,000 on that, say 1,800, say, right, or 3,600, sorry, 3,600. Now, if you are recording like this, what is going to the P&L? Only this. Therefore, only this one will be disallowed if it is not paid within the due date. Now, if suppose you are not taking input tax, you are taking only total here, then the entire amount will be disallowed for 43B purpose. That is what they say. I hope I am clear. Depends on whether GST input is claimed. If it is claimed, then only the audit fees will be disallowed. If input tax is not claimed separately, then the entire amount, including input tax, will be disallowed because that is going to the PN. Transactions with unregistered MSMEs. Now, if you are dealing with unregistered MSMEs, that means those who are not registered under 43B, naturally, you can understand, you will have the answer what you need to do. Only with registered MSMEs who are eligible will be eligible for the benefits of 43B, because section 43B also refers to MSME Act. Applies only if the MSME is registered. Be clear about this. Supplies made before Udyam registration. So does section 43B apply to supplies made before Udyam registration? Somebody has taken registration during the year and outstanding is some balance is there prior to that. Before Udyam registration, the supplier, when he has taken, before that some bills are pending as of March. Will disallowance be applied? No, will not be applied. Will apply retrospectively, which means after the registration only. Okay. Then permanent applicability of MSME, which means once you check this year for GST registration, whether they are MSME registered, whether they are qualifying for the benefits of MSME, should you review it periodically? Yes, you have to review, because one person can move from one state micro to macro, micro to small, and small to your next one is medium. So for medium, if he's going to medium, he's not eligible. Therefore, every year you are supposed to check it. Now, applicability for cash basis. What is it? Is 43B applicable to taxpayers following cash basis method of accounting? Under cash method of accounting, there is no outstanding at the year end. So there is no question of any outstanding payable. So then in that case, there is no problem. You don't have to comply with anything. Not applicable as there is no outstanding amount at the year end. Purchase of goods. When you are purchasing the goods, whether section 43B applies to expenses that are deductible under the Act, applies only if 100% deduction is applicable. So majorly like scientific research and all, if it comes, then it will come. Otherwise, it will not be applicable for capital goods. Mind you, these are all opinions. It is going to take a lot of litigation to come to a final conclusion. Department may take a different view. They can disallow on the depreciation also. We don't know. Presumptive tax schemes. Now, if somebody is following presumptive tax, now 43B provision applies unless specifically excluded by presumptive tax provisions. In that case, what happens? Whether you have to check for some case where you are doing presumptive taxation, return is being filed, whether this has to be checked. Your idea is no, because 43B overrides, does not override presumptive taxation provision. Therefore, presumptive tax will gain precedence over 43B. Therefore, disallowance under 43B will not be applicable for cases where presumptive taxation is happening. Of course, books are not maintained and all that, but we are looking at a situation where books are maintained. Now, provision made instead of crediting trade creditors. So again, here also it's very clear. Instead of crediting, nobody knows the creditors. So some other account, if you do it, whether it will be there. Are provision made in lieu of creditors allowed? Provision for expenses payable to MSME are disallowed if not paid within the stipulated time. Disallowance is allowed under 43B. Now it raises other questions. We'll come to that. So if you're not crediting creditors, some other account you are doing it, but it's payable to them, then disallowance is applicable. Cannot hide behind making a provision with some other account. Book profit from MAT is 43B applicable for computation of book profit? No, because this is controlled by some other provision for the purpose of computation. This will not come because it's come other some 43B is not applicable for that. Applicability for charitable trust. So charitable trusts do not have expenses that are deductible under 43B and do not compute income under net profits and gains of business. Because separate method of taxation, therefore it will not get attracted to 43B. Later on, we don't know what the department is going to do. The government can bring an act to include that also too. As of now, the way it sends it, this is what is applicable. Even department can take a different view, but we'll have to wait and see. So not applicable, there's no allowance expense for charitable purpose, charitable trust. Now, computation of investments. So when this investment and turnover you have to do for the first year to identify it, but it's not available, you may be doing for them, then it has to be based on a self-declaration. Some data is not there, so self-declaration basis, you take the investment and turnover for calculating whether they are micro, medium, or small. Provision for year-end expense. Now, this is interesting. We saw there audit fees or something is there. Trade creditors provision is being made in some other account. Whether it will be disallowed? Yes, it will be disallowed. It will attract publicity. But here it's a bit different. You are only providing for expense based on an estimate. So 43B applies only to actual payment. You are doing it and reversing it. Here and normally when we do audit, sometimes we have to do because we don't get the actual expenditure based on earlier times we provide it and then reverse it so that actual expense later can happen. In that case, it will not be applicable because 33B is not applicable till expenses are rendered. Now, what happens if the payment is made on or before the due date? So only unpaid portion will get attracted for that to year end. Only year end, whatever the spending is only there. Interest may get applied, but disallowance under 43B will not come. So only unpaid part will be disallowed. Now, can invoice credit terms be considered as agreement? Suppose in the invoice there is no written agreement, but in the invoice itself, the credit terms are given. So written communication detailing credit terms between buyer and seller can be treated as an agreement for the purpose of 43B, which means that it can be taken as written agreement if it is mentioned. The terms of period is given in the bill itself. So we have to be, that's why we have to, let me see later on, we'll just go through how to do the audit as far as 43B is concerned. Some guidance we can take. Now, this is again interesting, which we are going to face practically dual activities, which means how 43B, how will apply when both trading and manufacturing is also done by the same person. In that case, primary activity, what is it? You have to distinguish, and based on the major activity determines the status. Major activity is, manufacturing, then naturally you'll have to look at 43B, it is applicable for him. He may be micro and small, but it will He's also doing trading. So what is the primary activity? The primary activity in manufacturing, then we get attracted. If it is trading is primary, then we should not look at it. Now, what do we do? That is a problem. When we are getting from a supplier who is going to both trading and manufacturing goods, how do we identify? These are things that we have to be careful and take it as a decision at that time. What about enterprises? Are they covered? Proprietorships are also covered? Yes, very much they are covered. There's no doubt about it. If they are registered, they are covered under they are registered under the MSME Act, they are covered. Multiple proprietorships, again, if there are multiple proprietorships, how to determine this? You have to aggregate all the turnover for the purpose of applicability. So even multiple your proprietorship basis, it is not with the each business. It is the proprietorship you have to determine the applicability. That is what saying. Turnover of all concerned should be aggregated. Retention money, obviously, this is not a expense but a liability. Therefore, it will not be applicable for the purpose of 43B. It will not be disallowed. Purchases made prior to MSME registration, we have similarly seen that. So if you have taken disallowance, that is payments for purchases made before an entity obtains MSME registration, it will not be applicable because it's not subject to 43B disallowance. Not subject to. These are all we are talking about the supplier mainly. So it all comes from the supplier point of view. Buyer can be registered, not registered. Doesn't matter. 43B will get applied. If the supplier is registered or not, that is very important. Supply is not registered, don't think about it. If it is registered, when did you register? Part of the year, anything prior to that should not be considered. Adjustment for receivables. Sometimes we do some entries to adjust the receivables, like here there is a debtor and a creditor, both same parties we adjust. Therefore, the adjustment can also be taken for the considered as payment for the purpose of 43B. So the doubt will be we didn't pay to him, but we adjusted it. So in that case also it will be considered as payment. Payment made after the year end, but before the return filing. You now know by then that 43B is not 43BH is not like the other 43B cases. 43B cases, payment made before the year end, but before due date of filing, are allowed in the next year, not in the year in which expenses are incurred. Unlike the other 43B items, other 43B items we have time till the due date of filing them. It's allowed only in the next year if it is not complied. Delayed payment within the financial years. During the year itself, there is a delay. Whether disallowance will come, disallowance applies only the payment is remaining, disallowance under 43B, outstanding beyond the prescribed period, that is typically 45 days for registered MNCs or 15 days if it is there is no agreement. Mind you, please be clear. That means our 43BH gets attracted only if there is an outstanding balance at the year end. During there, if there is a delay as per the 45-15 days, 43BH will not get applied, but interest can get applied, which is a separate reporting which has been there for a long time and we have not bothered much about it. Disallowance and only if the payment remains outstanding beyond the prescribed period. Now let us look at some of the examples to get a clarity. Now, date of acceptance is 29/3. What is the credit period? 60 days. Therefore, due date from here to this is this plus 60 days? No, because here it is restricted to 45 days, assuming that there is a written agreement. Right? There is a written agreement. Though it cannot exceed 45 days. Therefore, the appointed date, this is the date of, date of acceptance of any goods or service that is received it. This is the due date as per MSME Act. And from here, you got 15 days. Here from due date as per, sorry. So, one second. So here, 13th date as per MSME Act, because 45 days from the date of acceptance as per the MSME Act. But actual payment has happened on 25/5. Therefore, there is a delay. So see, it is outstanding as on March. It is already received in March. But 45 days credit period is there because there is an agreement. Then it is due date is 13/5, but it's paid after that. Therefore, in 23/24, it will not be allowed. It will be allowed only in financial year 24/25 because it should have been paid within 13/5, but it's paid on 25/5. Similarly, 1/4, there is an agreement of 45 days. 16/5 is the due date, but it's paid beyond that, and it is paid within the year. Therefore, it is allowed in that year itself. But interest liability will come. 31/1, that is 2023/24 is the done. 15 days, there's no agreement. 15 days time is there, or agreement is there for 15 days. The due date is 15/2. So from year to year, 15 days. But it's paid on when? 22. But it is within the year, within 22. Therefore, in the same year, it will be allowed as due. So there is no problem there. Now, this one again, 2022/23, 23/24, sorry. What is the due date? 20 days is time. 110 is the due date. 1/9 to 20 days. It is paid on 3/10. So again, it is within the year itself. So it will be allowed in that year. Because our problem starts only if it is outstanding. 43BH will get here again. All the cases, interest liability will come. Okay? Another example, 30/11. So 2023/24 is the year in which it is done, financial year. 30 days credit. So 30/12 it should have been paid. It is paid before that. So that also doesn't matter. In the same year, it will be allowed. So within the year. 21/4. So 24/25 is the time. 40 days time. Therefore, it is to be paid by 31/5. It is paid on 26/6. Again within the year 24/25. 15/12, 2023/24. No agreement, nothing. 15 days time is there. 15 days. Therefore, 30/12 it should be paid, but it's paid on 5/4. So on March 24, it was outstanding and it is not paid within the due date. Therefore, it will be available only in, this will attract disallowance and it will not be allowed in 23/24. It will be allowed in only 24/25. 10/11/2023, again 2023/24, no agreement. Therefore, time limit is 15 days. That is 25/12. And actual date of payment is 30/11. So again, there is a delay. Now the question is, there is no problem because it is within that year itself. It is not March to next year. So it will be allowed in that year itself. I hope this will give a clarity of how this thing works. So 43B gets kicked in, 43BH gets kicked in only if it is outstanding at the year end. Now let us look at how to audit as far as 43B. There are some other points that I jotted down, how to go about. So number one, list out the suppliers from the purchase register. If you are having tally or anything, purchase register, you take it, eliminate the duplicates. That means you'll get only a clear list of the suppliers. Copy the above in another sheet and delete the suppliers not outstanding at the end. So not outstanding at the end, you delete it because we don't need to look at it. If it's paid within the year, it's gone. Anybody who's outstanding, only make a list. So that is the second thing. Third, you ask the client to furnish latest invoice of this reduced list, of the trimmed list. Trimmed list you ask him to furnish, which means you ask him to furnish the invoice of the suppliers of the trim list. Suppose A, B, C are there. A is paid within the period. It's not outstanding. So he goes away. Only B and C is there. So get an invoice, latest invoice of receipt from B and C only. Why? Because if the invoice shows Udyam registration is available in the invoice, then note it in the above Excel sheet. Also, note down the type of enterprise, micro, small, or medium. Does it does it finish your job to identify, yes, these guys are eligible under that? No. Then you have to ask the client to inquire whether these suppliers are manufacturer or trader. If they are traders, eliminate them. So under this, suppose B and C are, given the Udyam registration, they are registered. But C is a further registration. When further checked, you see the C is a trader. Therefore, only B, whose balance is outstanding, will be coming under the purview of 43BH. Check 43BH for compliance for the remaining, which is in this case only B. Because A was paid within the year, only B and C were pending. Out of that B and C you listed, but C was a trader. Therefore, that also got eliminated. Only B remains. So only for B you need to check. So this gives a broad outline of how to go about 43BH. I hope you have found it interesting because I tried to cover most of the things relating to MSME because that understanding is very important for you to make sure that your audit under 43BH is complete and correct, and we give a correct disclosure as far as 43BH is concerned. Happy tax auditing. Okay, then. Bye. Thank you.